They say signal blind spots are just dead zones. But what if every whisper of static, every dropped call, is a voice from the other side? I found a forgotten place, where the dead make their last call. My sister's voice, after 10 long years. It called me from the static. I picked up. Now the line's open, and they're all waiting to climb through. Chapter 1. The Call from 2012. The night sky was a sodden black rag, wiping away the last embers of the sunset over Neo-Tokyo, and leaving only the sickly neon glow of pink and violet to bleed into the humid air. Sam huddled in the corner of a back alley, his hands moving with practiced fluidness inside a rusted telecommunications box. The wires were a tangle of frayed nerves, flickering under the dim beam of his flashlight. The cold bite of metal, the stench of scorched low-grade plastic, and the ceaseless subterranean thrum of the city churned together in his exhausted senses. Deep within his eardrums, a high-frequency whine had been ringing since morning, as if someone was striking a miniature tuning fork inside his skull. Damn it, another sleepless night. Shit, he hissed, his vocal cords as dry as sandpaper, the word barely a breath of air. A sharp prick of static electricity jolted his fingertips, making him recoil. He knew the rules of this place, the unspoken first commandment shared by every maintenance tech. If a phone in the terminal room rings more than 3 times, you never pick up. Those lines weren't meant for the living. Down there was only silence and signal. There was no room for a human voice. But the company-issued maintenance terminal in his hand suddenly chirped with a crisp, rhythmic ring. Once, twice, then a third. Sam's hand froze, his pupils constricting in a rush of adrenaline. He stared at the jumping, unknown caller ID on the screen, a string of digits he had never seen before, yet one that felt like a recurring echo from his nightmares. 3 rings. His finger moved as if pulled by an invisible wire. At the exact moment of the 4th ring, he tapped the accept icon. The cold metallic casing pressed against his ear, and the high-frequency whine instantly magnified 100-fold, nearly fracturing his skull. "Hello?" he croaked, his voice trembling with a vulnerability he didn't know he still possessed. The voice that drifted from the other end was like a rusted blade slicing through the deepest scars of his heart. "Brother." The sound was soft, nearly spectral, yet impossibly clear. It was the voice of Lily, his sister, who had vanished 10 years ago. The terminal nearly slipped from his grasp as his breath solidified in his throat. He felt as though an invisible hand had clamped around his heart, turning his blood to ice. It was impossible. His sister had disappeared during the Great Blackout a decade ago. She had long since been declared dead. "Lily," he roared, his eyes burning with sudden heat. A wave of static washed through the line, sounding like 1,000 tiny glass shards rubbing together. Then Lily's voice returned, more urgent and fragmented this time. "I'm here." Then the line went dead. In its place came a rapid succession of pulse signals, not speech, but a stream of highly encrypted data. A signal trace began to glow on the terminal screen, writhing like a bioluminescent maggot trying to burrow out of the glass. It displayed no map data, only a raw, overwhelming sense of direction, electromagnetic pull guiding him deep into the bowels of the city, toward a blank void that existed on no official records. A chill crawled up his spine, but it was eclipsed by a desperate, manic hope. Ignoring the lingering numbness from the electrical shock, and forgetting to even close the junction box, Sam scrambled out of the alley. Following the frantic pulse of the signal, he stumbled through deserted streets and over the skeletal remains of abandoned buildings. Finally, the signal led him to a subway ventilation shaft smothered in graffiti. The rusted iron grates looked like a chorus of distorted masks under the jaundiced glow of the streetlights. The signal peaked here. The humming was so intense it made his eardrums ache, and the very air seemed to warp before his eyes. He threw his shoulder against the grate. The neglected metal groaned and buckled inward, revealing a pitch-black maw. Beneath the opening, a near-vertical metal ladder descended into the gloom. The air rising from below was a strange cocktail of damp earth, ozone from electrical overload, and a faint, inexplicable hint of something sickly sweet. "Lily," he whispered, his throat raw. He shoved the terminal into his pocket and gripped the freezing rungs of the ladder, descending inch by inch. The darkness swallowed him whole, leaving only the faint blinking of the terminal's status light to guide him through the deep. When his boots finally hit solid ground, a massive low-frequency thrum hit him like the breath of a sleeping giant. By the weak phosphorescence of his screen, he saw a colossal metal door, stained with rust and streaks of an unidentified fluid. The signal indicated that this was the end of the line. He heaved the heavy door open, and a burst of piercing blue light tore through the darkness. The air that rushed out was cold and bone-dry, thick with the scent of ozone and ancient iron. Before him lay a vast, cavernous space. Towering server racks stood like rows of monolithic tombstones, while countless fiber-optic cables wove together like glowing blue veins, pulsing with a haunting ethereal light. This wasn't a data center registered in any city archive. Its scale and its atmosphere carried a weight of something terrifyingly ancient and absolute. Chapter 2. Rule Hash 4. No echoes. Sam pushed deeper into the humming maw of the server room. The air, thick with the smell of ozone and old dust, vibrated with a constant, low thrum that grated against the high-pitched shriek already living in his ears. Every shadowed rack of blinking lights seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, a network of unseen eyes watching his every move. His flashlight beam cut a shaky path through the gloom, illuminating endless serpentine cables, tangled like petrified vines, and banks of ancient, sweat-stained consoles. He was looking for a nexus, a control panel, anything that could explain the signal or the ghost call from his sister. His gaze snagged on a rusted utility cart tucked beside a towering stack of archaic data drives. On its grimy surface, half hidden beneath a scattering of loose wires, lay something that looked out of place. It was a book, not a data slate or a manual for these antique machines, but a thick, paper-bound volume. It was stained. Dark, crusted patches marred its cover, the color of dried blood. Sam's hand, slick with nervous sweat, fumbled for it. The paper felt rough and brittle with age, but the stains were disturbingly fresh beneath his fingertips, a chilling counterpoint to the forgotten dust. He peeled it open to a random page, his eyes burning from lack of sleep as he scanned the faded print. It wasn't a technical diagram, it was a list of rules, oddly archaic in their phrasing, and numbered by hand in a shaky, almost desperate script. His breath hitched as he read the one circled repeatedly in rusty brown ink. Rule Hash 7. If you hear your echo more than 3 times, it means he is mimicking your breath. Do not inhale, do not exhale, do not speak. Silence is your only shield. The words clawed at something primal in his gut. His own ragged breathing, loud in the suffocating silence of the server room, suddenly felt wrong, too heavy. His chest tightened. Was it just his exhaustion, or was the hum of the servers subtly shifting? He strained to hear over the incessant ringing, his head throbbing. Then he heard it, a whisper faint, like a ghost of his own exhalation, barely perceptible above the mechanical drone. *H-R. It wasn't a sound bouncing off the walls, but a phantom breath right beside his ear. Then another came, closer and heavier. *H-R. Sam's eyes darted around the cavernous space, but there was nothing, no movement, just the endless cold machinery. His heart hammered against his ribs. Rule number 7. More than 3 times. He heard a third breath, this one louder, a shallow gasp that mirrored his own current terror. Asterisk HAAHAHUH. Asterisk. Panic surged cold and sharp. His lungs burned. He slammed the manual shut. The echo of the thick paper a percussive slap in the silence. Desperate, Sam clamped his mouth shut and pinched his nose with a shaky hand, holding his breath until black spots danced at the edge of his vision. Every muscle screamed, demanding air, yet even as his own breathing ceased, the imitation continued. A fourth, fifth, and sixth breath followed, shallow and rapid, filling the vast room. Asterisk H. The phantom inhales and exhales layered over each other, a cacophony of stolen life, mocking his struggle. They grew louder and closer until it felt like a chorus of invisible entities were all breathing the same air just inches from his face. The ringing in his ears intensified into a painful scream, a sharp counterpoint to the multiplying, spectral breaths of the operator. Chapter 3. The Flesh in the Wires. Sam's lungs burned, a searing agony in his chest. His body screamed for air, a primal, all-consuming demand that his conscious mind fought to suppress. Each phantom breath, wet and guttural, multiplied in the suffocating silence, a chorus of unseen entities wheezing around him in mockery of his struggle. The high-pitched whine in his ears, already a drill bit in his skull, intensified into a siren call to madness. He couldn't last much longer. His vision swam as pinpricks of light danced at the edges of his sight. He had to do something, anything, before the darkness swallowed him whole. His gaze, wild and unfocused, snagged on a thick bundle of fiber-optic cables snaking from a rusted conduit in the wall directly beside the manual. They pulsed with a faint internal glow. Not light, but something deeper, almost organic. A desperate primal hunch seized him. The source, the root of this twisted nightmare had to be here. He fumbled for his multi-tool, his fingers clumsy with terror, and tore at the grimy institutional grey insulation. The plastic casing didn't crack. It tore with a sickening wet rip. Not the dry snap he expected, a foul metallic tang, sharp as rusted blood, and something vaguely sweet flooded the air. Beneath the surface, instead of neatly bundled wires, lay a tangled mass, dark, impossibly fine strands, brittle yet strangely elastic, coiled around something else, a slick, off-white substance, veined with sickly blue and red, that pulsed faintly like a severed nerve. It was hair, human hair, matted with grime and something viscous. This wasn't mere insulation, it was tissue. Neural tissue was impossibly woven into the city's data lines, forming a horrific, living conduit. Bile rose in Sam's throat, thick and bitter. He fought the urge to vomit as the phantom breaths around him seemed to deepen, savoring his revulsion. The air in the server room, already thick with the stench of ozone and organic decay, congealed around him. Then, shattering the horrific silence, his community shrieked. It was a raw, digital cry, impossibly loud in the small space. No, not now. He stared at the screen, the caller ID flashing unknown. His hand trembled, but a morbid curiosity and a fading hope that this was all just a glitch made him tap the answer icon. A sound erupted from the tiny speaker. It wasn't static, nor was it the operator's calm, predatory voice. It was his own scream, a long, guttural wail of pure agony and terror, distorted as if recorded moments ago, ripped from the deepest pit of his being. It was his own voice and his own suffering thrown back at him from a future that was already here, from a nightmare that had only just begun. The ringing in his ears became a symphony of torment, a chaotic crescendo of despair as his mind began to reel on the verge of a total breakdown. That's the end of today's story, but the journey has just begun. I'm X9 Text Lord. If you loved this epic adventure, please subscribe, hit the like button, and share. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter.